Morning.
Morning. How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Yeah,
Morning.
very well, thanks.
Morning, everyone. How are we all doing? It's very sunny here in
Sun,
Birmingham. I hope it is sunny everywhere else, where
sunny here
everywhere
in
else is.
Hastings too. I'm here in
Nice.
Hastings for the week.
Morning,
Nice.
sunny.
That's a nice
I'm
part of the
I'm
world.
in
Yeah,
sunny
first
Wolverhampton.
time here.
You're in sunny Wolverhampton, was that?
Yeah, I'm just visiting my parents. So if you sit on the
Ah,
east wing where my parents seem to breakfast like first thing in the morning and never move, so they coin that part of the house. It is so sunny, and I'm like at the back of the house where it's like I can see the sun, but it's not coming in. At least it's sunny.
that's good. It is really sunny here in Birmingham. So I hope it's sunny everywhere else, where everyone else is. So as people are joining, I'm sure people will start joining a couple minutes into the session. Welcome to the second masterclass of Module 4. If you managed to come to yesterday's session, I hope that James has warmed you up with what to expect with this module. A lot of information was thrown at you and more information will be thrown at you today. But this is an amazing module that James will be leading. So yes, welcome to the second masterclass, and I will hand over to James.
Thank you very much. Right. I'm just going to share my screen. We'll do that awkward. Can you see my screen? Yes, of course you can thing. There we go. Excellent. So welcome back. Let's have a look how many people here. Okay, I didn't scare too many people away. This is good. Well, welcome back. So I've got you for 3 sessions. So yes, so we'll look at communication basics and we'll recap that in a second. Today we're looking at common challenges that you might face when you're communicating and selling your offering. And as I said before yesterday, communication, selling, I use those terms interchangeably. For me, they're exactly the same thing, really. So to recap yesterday, this is what we covered over about 4,500 slides. So we talked about what sales actually is. So for me, it's about really good communication and finding a connection point. It's definitely not about techniques and trickery and pushing, persuading, convincing, or anything like that. And if you remember, we've got this notion of if you don't like it as a buyer, then try not to do it as a seller. So if you don't like to be pushed and chased endlessly and coerced, then why do you find yourself doing that? Just a sense check that. Then we looked at what your buyers are really buying from you, so what you're really selling. And actually, from my experience, it's what I call, the destination, not the journey. So it's how you leave people better than when you found them. It's the thereafter. And more often than not, it's an emotion, it's a feeling, it's a contextual, real world thing. So whatever your product or service happens to be, it's actually a vehicle of sorts to get people to where they want to be. Then we considered who you're selling to. So everybody here has got an avatar pretty much, but the thing that we need to fill in if we don't already have that is what's the trigger point? So what motivates somebody to need you to act? Where's the urgency? And if you've already got existing clients, you can have a look through current, past clients. There will be some clues, some patterns there. Once you can identify what triggers and motivates people to come to you, it makes life a lot easier for you to then find more of those people. So we're not just speaking to the right people, we're speaking to the right people at the right time, which makes a big difference. And then I told everybody off about having proof, because often when I meet people, they don't have a great deal of social proof. But it's one of those things where it's free for you to get. We just have to remember to do it and to understand the importance of it. And again, there's this notion of when you're buying something yourself, not just on Amazon, but we use Amazon as an example because most people buy things there. We're looking for star ratings, reviews, proof, all sorts of stuff there as a buyer. And then as a seller, we tend to not really have that stuff. And then we're astonished why people don't buy from us. But of course, they're looking for that when they're buying from you. So collecting proof, social proof, evidence, essentially part of your sales process. So when you've delivered something to a client, making the time to ask them for feedback. You don't need to start incentivizing people with bottles of wine and gift voucher, any of this kind of stuff. A genuine, honest ask saying, please, could we have some feedback or leave us a review? And this is why, it helps us to get more business. It helps us do this. It helps us to do that. From my experience, that's all you need to do. And then we ended the session with being more memorable and differentiating by having a articulated, I was going to say animated then, articulated process of working. So one of the things that I found out when I first started Clear Sales Message was that for most businesses, if you ask them how they do what they do, Yes, they can give you an explanation of it, but it's a little bit round the houses, and you can feel when somebody's ready for a question and when they're not. So how do you do what you do? Well, first of all, James, what we'll do, and you can tell from where they're looking and what they're doing, it's not really buttoned down. Whereas if you say, how do you do it? And if we go back to the example from yesterday with the kitchen people, well, we look at 4 factors, James: lifestyle, space. Know what I'm talking about. I'm professional and I'm capable of giving you what you need. And in that regard, it's going to help you to differentiate from the competition, because a number of people just do not take the time to do this because I guess they don't realize the importance of it. And it can make you memorable also. So the first thing I want to do, as I have a very quick cough here, is ask any questions, revelations from yesterday, anything that you thought, oh my God, that was brilliant, or that you want to challenge me on as well. Excuse me.
Sorry, go.
I've finished coughing now. It's okay.
Yeah. Actually, I had an inquiry from a potential client yesterday.
Okay.
It was a great scenario in that I met this person ages ago and wanted to work with him, and there was nothing there, and suddenly he comes up and he goes, I have a request. I need your help with this. And I've also been reading a book called £100 Million Offers or $100 Million Offers by Alex
Hormozy.
Yeah,
Very good book, yeah.
Really good book, right?
Great
and
book.
It talks about pricing yourself properly. But to do so, you have to know your service inside out. And it's, as you said yesterday, we've got 22 reviews on Google. So it's not like it's 0, but it's not hundreds. And it's a case of like, I have to put a proposal together really quickly and get as much as possible, but give him as much value as possible. And it's kind of like how to use what we did yesterday really quickly. Any tips?
I need a little bit more information than that. So what's the nature of your offering?
Well, he wants us to run all his marketing, so all his blogs, his newsletters, and all of that kind of stuff. And we've got another client that we're doing it for, and it's been going really well. And we've been doing that for about 8 months, but we haven't got dozens of these examples.
Okay, a couple of tips. One of the first ones is actually presenting the price. So it's really easy in this scenario to have a conversation with somebody and say, yep, no problem, I'll send you a proposal over. And at that point, they will know how much you charge. So, and this is from the seller point of view. So if you imagine from the buyer point of view, how many times have we had somebody send us a proposal? We haven't really even read it. We've just scrolled to the bottom right, looked at the price, gone, oh my God, that's expensive, and never got back to those people. That's quite a common thing. And it's also common, excuse me, for us to not verbalize the price and send a proposal across. So my first piece of advice here would be for you to talk through the options with the person. So the first time they hear the price, they see or hear the price, is you verbalize it to them. So this is what it's going to be. And there's something coming later on called the value loop, which is perfectly how you do this in a conversation. We'll cover this in a bit more detail. But the first time they see the price in this scenario, we want to verbalize it. But we also want to potentially have other options available, because another problem people have is, here is the price, take it or leave it. And that's it. So you say, here is the price. And then from there, we could have a higher price with more involvement or a lesser price with less involvement, but we've got room to move. Otherwise, here's the price. Go, oh my God, that's expensive. That's not whatever. And we haven't really got too much room to move. So the first 2 things I would say is verbalize the price, have more than one price available. And then secondly, as you're alluding to there, 22 is still a good number of reviews. Don't worry about that. The point I'm making is it should just be a continual thing. It's like you wouldn't stop looking for clients, would you? No. So let's not stop looking for social proof as well. It should be just a continual thing. But use some examples. So, yes, we work with somebody like you, had your problem. This is what we did. All we're trying to do here is to relate what you're offering back to what they need. And remember that they don't actually want you to create blogs for them, run their email list, or whatever you're doing for them per se, do they? What do they really want? What are they trying to do? They're trying to sell more
brand
stuff.
awareness, yeah.
There we go, raise brand awareness. So focus on that. So focus on, this is going to help you build brand awareness, not this is how we'll run your marketing campaign kind of thing.
Okay.
That is that destination, plain seat, syntax, changing the ordering thing. If you listen out later, we'll be talking about the value loop, which is how we commercialize a conversation. That's my kind of initial feedback for you. Hopefully that's useful.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
James,
you're welcome.
Good morning. Can I sneak in quickly?
Of course, you already have. Look at that. Well done.
I was just trying to be polite about it. But
We're all too polite. Just steam in. It's fine.
so I really found that helpful. My question is more with regards to how do you name drop without it sounding creepy and sleazy? So I've been fortunate to work with great global brands, great organizations, and I want to work with their peers. I want to work with them again, just in conversation. But I hate when it feels really name droppy. So I think there's a combination here. I don't quite know how to utilize my feedback and testimonials from these clients in my general marketing or just online presence, but also within conversation, I don't know how to make it not just do it. You're probably right, Raisha. I just honestly, yeah, and I did this last week with so and so. It's like, ugh.
I would say, so this goes back to something that I mentioned yesterday, and I mentioned all my sessions, which is you have to do what feels right to you. As much as I'm going to say, oh, you should do this and this works and blah, 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 and that's great. If it doesn't feel right for you to do it, please don't do it, because it just won't work. And the people you're talking to will feel that. So if you feel weird name dropping celebrities and brands things you work with, then don't do it. What you could do as an alternative is say, oh, actually, we've worked with similar brands in the space, and then share something with them. So have like a one-page PDF document or something with here's the logo of the brand or the picture of the person and what they said about you. So we're name dropping, but we're doing it in a less kind of obvious way. So, oh, we've worked with similar blah, blah type brands in the space. I'll send something across to you with a bit of their feedback so you can understand a bit more about what we did for them. Is that okay?
Oh my gosh, it makes me feel so much more comfortable.
There you go. And that's what we're looking for, right? So you're still name dropping, and that's the point. We've got to get these names across. It's important. But we're doing it in a way that feels okay for you. And nobody's going to see that document and really go, can't believe she mentioned so-and-so. Well, of course you did. They were your client.
And so you've hit the nail on the head. So you've actually hit the nail on the head. I will name drop heavily on the website and the proposal, but it's articulating it. It's the verbal name dropping that I struggle with. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. Thank you. So
you're welcome.
Similar people.
You're welcome. The main thing here is if you don't feel comfortable doing it, just find another way. Because if you try and just push through and do it, I will feel it. And this is a big problem with pricing in particular. And people go, oh, we're not the cheapest. Oh, here's the price. And they feel really uncomfortable. We have to find a better way of doing it. And there's lots of options.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Any other questions, revelations, or challenges from yesterday? If not, we will move on. But just going to give you 20 more seconds or so to interrupt me before I take a deep breath and go through about 1 million slides. No? Okay. Here we go. I ain't joking. Okay, so just to remind you, the module task is to do these two things. So it's answering what do you do? And we had a template for this yesterday. So I help clients to achieve benefit by method. We can talk to that when you book a call with me. There's lots of other different ways of doing it, but we're looking for a nice, succinct articulation of what you do. So for me, for example, depending on the audience, I would say I teach people how to sell. And how I do it, it comes in two parts. So we have clear sales message, which is about articulating clearly what you offer so people understand it, and selling confidence, which is the behavioral piece of doing what feels right, knowing how to maneuver in a conversation. That's what we're looking for in this task. So what do you do? And then how do you do it? And for the how do you do it, I know we talked about process of working yesterday, etc. Don't get too het up on having like a diagram and a name or anything like that. We just need a nice basics articulation with as few words as possible. This is what we do. This is how we do it. And to the point we just covered there, it's got to resonate with you. You've got to feel comfortable. So if at any point you're saying things because you feel like you have to say them because I told you to do it or whatever, just think twice about that and try and bring it back into how you would speak naturally and how you would be, because that's the sweet spot. That's what we're looking for. That'll be uploaded as a video. I'm saying up to 60 seconds because I don't need you just to fill the entire 60 seconds if you don't need to. And of course, if you overrun, that really doesn't matter too, but we're trying to keep it as short as possible. Bearing in mind, people have got really short attention span, low average reading age, etc. The shorter and more concise we can be in our communication, the better it is, the more commercially viable it is. And if you haven't already, book a call through the Accelerator app with me. We can spend some time going over that, or any other kind of really specific challenges that you've got. The thing for me with these calls is there's lots of people doing lots of different things, some products, some service, some have this problem, some have that problem, etc. So I have to talk at a fairly high level of principle. It's when I can speak to you one-on-one or answer questions like just then, I can really do a lot more damage for you and get to the nub of the matter. Okay, today we're talking about common challenges. For me, when you're selling, communicating, whatever, one of the main themes here, and I don't know if this resonates with anybody, is you talk to people and they just immediately don't seem to get it. Like, I'm not really sure what you actually offer. This is a very, very common thing, and there's a number of reasons behind it. So the first thing we have to consider, and I know I'm kind of laboring the point here, but it's important, is to really nail this. And if you struggle with this, make sure you ask me when we book a call and have a chat together. But understanding, what are these people really wanting? So to go back to the marketing example there, they don't actually want the emails, the blogs, or any of that stuff. They do, but they don't. That's a vehicle to get them somewhere else. So they want brand awareness. They want more sales. They're launching a new product. They're trying to beat a competitor, whatever. We have to keep that front of mind. And everything we talk about just goes back to that. So we'll do your emails in this way and that in that way. And that will help with brand awareness because blah, blah, blah. So it's about connecting it back. The reason people don't get it is because we talk about the plain seat too much and the details of the emails and the technicals, etc. And the client's thinking, I don't really care about that. I'm trying to raise brand awareness. Will this help me? Yes or no? So we have to do the thinking and the legwork for them and connect the dots. A really good phrase, which isn't in this presentation, but please jot this down, is, excuse me, what that means is. What that means is, and this is how we go from feature to benefit. So if you find yourself talking about the details, so we use blah, blah email servers and this encryption technology and etc. Getting a bit technical. What that means is, so then we can talk about the impact. So what that means is your emails are more likely to be opened, less likely to be spam, etc. And that will help people understand and then lead to brand awareness. So what that means is how we get from feature to benefit. Nice, simple thing to remember. So from my experience, there are 5 main issues that people have when they're selling, communicating about their offering. You might suffer with one of these. You might suffer with all 5. If it's all 5, definitely book a call with me because you've got a lot of homework. But generally, it's going to be 1 or 2. So first one is a large or complicated offering. So, there's so many things we do, James. Oh, where do we begin? What do we do? And I've got some strategies on how we deal with that. Second one, very common. Justifying the price. So whether you've got an intangible service, so I've got an intangible service, so it's hard for me sometimes to justify the price because I'm not delivering a box of widgets to somebody, or you've got a high value offering and people, if you remember from yesterday, they're getting a little bit disconnected. So I've got the money, but I'm not really sure what I get. So we'll talk about justifying the price. I kind of hate the word justify because it implies there is no value, but there is. You might have an intangible offering, so a service, how we make that more tangible, and there's certain things that we can do there. Nice to have. This is a very interesting one. So sometimes you'll get people who say lovely things to you on the phone. You have a meeting. Oh my God, this is great. This is awesome. And they never part with their money. They never buy from you. For them, it's a nice to have. So although they like what you're talking about, it's not compelling enough for them to spend their money on. So how do we get around that? Got a couple of strategies for that. And the last one, which may or may not be applicable for all of you, but some people wouldn't work with me or wouldn't work with you for marketing emails or that kind of stuff because they want to do it themselves. They want to take it in-house. Depending on the problems that you're solving and what you're doing, sometimes your buyers can perceive the DIY, the do-it-yourself option, to be the easiest and the cheapest option. It's absolutely not, but it's up to us to be able to articulate that to them and say, well, if you want to do it yourself in-house, you can do, because remember, it's your choice. We're not forcing anybody to do anything, right? So yeah, potentially you could do it in-house, but please be careful because these are some of the things that could go wrong. Or historically, I know these things have gone wrong for people. And if that happened, blah, blah, blah. And we can also, I'll get into more detail here, but we can also use that example of, have you ever done something yourself before? It's gone wrong. And then you've spent more money to put it right than you would have had if you just paid somebody to do it in the first place. And for a lot of people, like, oh yeah, I've definitely done that, whether it's a literal at-home DIY project, decorating or something in their business, there's things that we can do. But like with everything with clear sales message, it's about just being prepared and being concise and having our talking points and our arguments ready to go, so we know. So it's a bit like that Alex Hormozy book, where you've really got to know things inside out and be a master of what you're doing. And I'm kind of expecting that anyway. So if you're selling your stuff to me, if you remember back to confidence, certainty, expertise, I'm expecting you to be an expert. I'm expecting you to be certain you can get the result. And I'm expecting you to deal with me in a really confident manner and to lead the conversation, because you should have done this a few times before. It's not your first time at the rodeo. Okay, let's start with this one. We'll work our way through. Please feel free to interrupt me and ask questions as we go, whether you pop them in the chat, and Shazid, if you can let me know, or if you just take yourself off mute and ask me, to try and make this more of a conversation today than more of a rant yesterday, I think it was. There we go. Hopefully it's still useful. Right. When it comes to a large or complicated offering, first thing we've got to do is relate everything back to the desired end result. So this is the selling the destination, not the journey thing. We need to remember this. So if we're struggling with, I do lots of different things, millions of different products and services, etc., and you've come to me, I can ask you and say, what are you trying to achieve here? What are you looking for? So I can just put the burden slightly back on you and say, just remind me, what are you trying to do here? Well, we're trying to raise brand awareness. Well, immediately about 40% of all of my offering then disappears, because it's not about brand awareness. So I can just focus on that bit. So bringing the focus back to the buyer and say, what are you trying to achieve here? And focusing on the challenges they're facing, the problems, or what they're trying to do. That helps immediately to cut down a big part of a large or complicated offering. Another way of saying that is, what's the perfect outcome? So how are we, how we judge success? What does perfection look like? Any of these kind of terms here, it's another way of saying this. What are you trying to achieve? What's the outcome? What's the goal? What does perfect look like, etc.? Get them to tell you, and then you can overlay your offering onto that, and you can ignore the bits that are irrelevant. If we don't do this, we'll end up telling people the 170,000 different things we can do, and we'll just kind of blow their minds like, oh, I don't know. I need you to guide me. That's what they're looking for, which is another way of saying sell the destination, not the journey.
James, quick question.
Of course. Go for it.
Sorry, I wasn't able to be on the mic yesterday, so you can hear my voice a lot potentially.
Oh, no, go on.
So, do you know those two questions you asked? Brilliant questions. My one is, would it be worthwhile putting that in the intake form when they're booking a call with you, to gather that information ahead of the call and reiterate that question within the call, or just save it till the call?
100%. If you're booking calls with people using like Calendly or something, we can give them questions. Yeah, absolutely. Another way of doing this is, how are you judging success? And this kind of goes back to, there's a marker on my wall here where you're going to be happy with what I'm doing for you. If I ask you where it is, I can tell you if I can hit it. If I have no idea, I'm just shooting blind. So yeah, absolutely. If they're booking a call with you, you can say, what are you trying to achieve? What's a perfect outcome? What does success look like? What's the goal? Whatever. Yeah, be as specific as possible, and absolutely then reiterate that on the call, because that then ties them to that. And so later down in the relationship, you can say, you wanted this, we delivered this. So if they are unhappy for any reason, say, well, you wanted this, we delivered that. I'm not really sure where this went wrong, kind of thing. But at least we've got a guide on what we're aiming for. So yeah, absolutely. If you're using Calendly, something like that, where you can ask questions, go for it. 100%. I would suggest you do that. You're welcome. Large or complicated offerings. One of the things we can also do is sort of segment things into ranges and groupings. So this is kind of, this is where I have to think of random examples on the spot. You have to bear with me. This is kind of communication within the business. So internal marketing, if it's a larger business. This is external marketing. This is online marketing. This is offline marketing. If we just silo and cluster and have things in certain different ranges, we can also do that for the end result. So this is what we do for brand awareness. This is what we do for purely growing your sales. This is what we do for growing your audience specifically, or your engagement, or whatever. So you can segment by what they're looking for or the nature of your offering, but just having some kind of segmentation. It's a bit like when you go to a restaurant, they give you the menu, they put the starters together, the mains, the desserts. It's that kind of thing. A lot of stuff I talk about as well, admittedly, is very basic, very straightforward. But for whatever reason, we just don't really think about it when it comes to communicating our offering. And I think it is that we behave one way as a buyer and one way as a seller thing. So we can segment into ranges, This is very important. We can also talk about the scope of our offering. And this comes in the territory, if you're on the call yesterday, of obvious sales message. So pointing out the obvious to people. What's the smallest thing you do? What's the biggest thing you do? What's the smallest problem you solve? The biggest problem? Are there geographical limitations, etc.? What's the large and the small, the minimum, maximum scope of the different variables that matter to your buyer? So here, pardon me, for Paul's Plumbing, if he hadn't put boiler installations on there, I may never have called him for that, because I would presume he only does small plumbing jobs and a boiler is more of a specialist thing. So the fact that he said that, and this is obviously just a fictional example, the fact that he said that means I'm more likely to ask him for a boiler than not. So if we don't say to people explicitly what we can and can't do, they might preclude themselves from dealing with you because they think their problem is too big for you to solve or too small for you to solve as well, which is a real issue. And you'll never hear about this stuff because they'll just preclude, before they even talk to you, they'll preclude or presume that they can't work with you. So it could be things like this: money or price, smallest to largest, location, where do you operate or deliver, what's the result, the types of client that you work with. It all comes back to what are the elements that matter to your buyer and how are you going to help them to identify if your service is actually appropriate for their need and applicable. And we'll share all these slides. So by all means, take screenshots and notes, etc. But I've got about 600 slides from the 3 days that I'll be sending across to blow up your inboxes. Here's an example. And this is a non-rhetorical question. So please unmute yourself or put it in the chat. If I was an IFA, an independent financial advisor, which I'm not, but if I was, how much money do you think you need to have to invest with me? How much money would you need to have to invest with me if I'm an IFA?
Isn't that subjective, as in how much do you value in your own investment and how much money you want to put into that investment as opposed to what you cost?
But if we're talking about a lump sum, if there's a lump sum required to invest with me, which most people presume there is with an independent financial advisor, is it in the hundreds? Is it in the thousands? Is it in the tens of thousands?
I would presume hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I think 50,000 upwards. They tend not to be too interested, some of them, unless it's 250,000.
Okay, 250,000.
I think it could just vary. I go back to how much you want to invest.
Yeah, Sunny.
I agree with Raisha. Yeah, Raisha said £1. There's adverts
Yeah.
everywhere. It only takes £1 to invest in an ISA.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
an ISA, you fall into that bracket.
Minimal.
So the point here, and you have to excuse me because I can't actually see the chat. So the point here is and often when I ask this, I'll get 5,000, 10,000. I've never had as much as 250,000. That's a huge number, right? So if you thought that was the case and I'm an IFA, and let's say you don't have £250,000 to invest, you're not going to bother talking to me because you think that I'm not going to be interested or I'm not going to be able to help you. When actually, for most of them, and I've dealt with quite a few, I can assure you over my time, it's from £1 or maybe, £50 a month or £100 a month or whatever, but it's certainly not thousands and tens of thousands, because an IFA, an independent financial advisor, is there to help you save and grow and make better money decisions. Yes, if you've got millions to invest, that's awesome, but you don't necessarily have to have that. I totally respect the point about, they might be less interested if you don't have too much money. I get that. But the point you're making here is if I'm an IFA and this was a call about an IFA, I said, great, I'd love for you guys to invest with me. Most of you go, oh, couldn't possibly, James. I haven't got 50 grand, 250 grand or whatever. And I'm sat there thinking, but you need £1. But if I don't tell you that, it's over. So this is obvious sales message. You need to be very, very clear with people, the smallest and the largest. And the smallest is kind of almost the most important one, particularly in this scenario. What's the smallest engagement, the minimum level of engagement? I think that's one of the things in that Alex Hormozi book, funny enough, MLE, minimum level of engagement. Most businesses don't do this because we know what this is ourselves, and we don't realize that people think they need 250 grand to invest with an IFA. But I would have lost your business because you would have precluded yourself from dealing with me. So this comes down to, presuming you don't have that, if you've got that money, congrats, that's awesome. So this comes down to WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, which is computer terminology. So we have this real challenge of saying as much as possible so people understand our offering and can engage with it, but not too much that we blow their minds. So for example, if as well as clear sales message, I had a window cleaning business or a dog walking business or something completely random, if I didn't tell you about that, how could I possibly wish to sell it to you? So I have to give you the bare bones, the bare bits of information that you need, not too little, not too much. But that IFA example is always an interesting one because we always get, thousands, tens of thousands, and it's just not the case. So the question here is, how many people have precluded themselves from dealing with you because they thought you were too big, too important, too expensive? And maybe, respectfully, that wasn't the case. And this is kind of the double-edged sword with having those big name brands as well. Because if you're dealing with big name brands and I'm not a big name brand, I might think, oh, well, she's not going to be interested in dealing with me, then I'm just clear sales message. So we have to make it clear that we work with independent startup businesses, or whatever you happen to do. I'm sort of riffing here, independent startup businesses, all the way up to well-known household brands and everything in between. Just making that statement could save you tens of thousands of pounds in lost business, because these people then go, oh, actually, yeah, they can help us. So there's this really interesting thing about big name brands. It can scare people off because I'm not the BBC or Google or whatever. So she's probably interested in me. And there we go. Menu pricing. So we talked about segmenting things before. This comes down to actually talking about the price, which I know is a super contentious issue. And this comes back to what feels right to you is what you should actually go with. But I have to cover the gamut here and give lots of suggestions. For some people, having like a laid out menu, fixed price offering of this service or product is this service or product is that, etc., that can help people to navigate your offering. I think for me personally, the price has to be verbalized first and foremost, depending on what the offering is. But in most B2B service-based things, if you're not verbalizing the price, you're running a high risk of somebody ghosting you. And I'm sure we've all had that experience of had a great chat with somebody. I'll send you a proposal. We spent lots of time making the proposal. We send it across. Nothing ever happens. And that's because you were too expensive, but you don't have the opportunity to talk with that person about that. And it's embarrassing for them to come back and say, oh, wow, it was 50 grand. I thought it was going to be 50p or whatever. So it's easier for them just to disconnect from you. So having a fixed price menu, if applicable, and it has to resonate and feel right to you, that's a good option. I have it for my own offering. So I verbalize the price first of all with my clients. And then on an email, I send them this with a bit more detail. So on the phone call, if they haven't asked me the price, but they say, can you send me a proposal, blah, 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 I will actually offer up the price them and suggest them and say, just to give you just to talk commercials for a second and give you an indication, this will be in the region of blah. How does that sound to you? And then from there, I can gauge, or we can have a chat if they think it's expensive or not, blah, blah, blah. But me sending through my proposal is no surprise. So yes, if they lie to me and say, oh, that's great, and it's not, I can't do much about that. But the amount of times they said, oh, it's this, and they said, oh, actually, we'll go for this then instead, or we have a chat about it, it just saves time. So your proposal is then just confirming what you've already spoken about, or your email is confirming what we've already spoken about, rather than a big surprise. I had recently, just to give you a little insight into the exciting world that I live in, I need a new roof on my house, which is great. So in my head, it's about 10 to 15,000 ish for a roof. I had some people come over and they did all the measurements, etc. I waited 2 weeks for the quotation. They sent it through. I ignored everything, scrolled to the bottom right. It was £33,000. That's not for loft conversion. That's just for a roof. So I'm like, oh my God, if you'd have told me that when you're at my house, I could have saved you all of that time. Why bother? Because it's like double what I was expecting. So there, I went back and explained to them and said, this is, it's a bit more, this is what I was expecting, blah, blah, blah. But most people wouldn't, right? Most people would just go, oh my God, delete and run away. Like, wow, no thanks. Very important to verbalize the price. Right, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Let me just climb down there. Okay.
James, before you climb down.
Okay, let me climb back up. Yeah, go
ahead. So I kind of had this experience. So predominantly with the intake forms, when people were in, and initially I had a question there asking if they had a budget, but it wasn't clarifying the MLE on my side. So I changed it and included that range with my MLE as a starting point on the intake form. In terms of the order of service and what you were saying, that spreadsheet you sent them with the further details, are you showing them that in real time on the call, verbalizing the different options, or are you verbalizing the MLE service price point on the call and then sending that additionally at a date?
I'm doing that one. So MLE is minimum level of engagement for anybody that's not sure on that minimum level of engagement. So generally on my sales calls, I will have a chat with the person. What I'm actually trying to do is get them to say, so how does this work and what do you charge? Because then I know they're very much interested. So I wouldn't just foist myself upon them. And if they're not going to ask me, I'm happy for that call to run out because they're not that interested then, I would presume.
Okay.
But when we do get to this, yeah, so I'll talk them through approximately, say, here is approximately what we do, blah, blah, blah. But I will send you a list, an exhaustive list of everything. And there's some links within there to my, 4 million LinkedIn recommendations, blah, blah, blah. But I'll talk through that. So I don't go through that line by line. I've done this a few times now, so I kind of know approximately what's on there. But I'll definitely say, I think for you, it would be approximately this. How does that sound to you? Blah, blah, blah. Great. I'll send you the email. And there we go. That's how I deal with that. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks very much.
Hi,
I saw a hand up.
James.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, I have a question.
Go for it.
So if you deal with like B2B kind of corporates, who maybe like have a conversation with you and may not be the decision maker, at what point do you share the price? Because sometimes before we can actually start talking about price, it can take up to like 2 to 3 meetings.
Yes.
Do you tell the price to the first person you speak to, or do you tell the price to the second person you speak to, or the third person you speak to? Like, who do you tell the price to and what stage?
So we'll cover this a little later in the value loop. But what I would do is at the very start is I would ask the question, is there anybody else involved in making this decision? To see if they are or are not the decision maker. And if they're not, then I would try and get a meeting with that person. If that's not possible, that's fine. But what we're trying to do really is talk about what's the challenge that you've got. Okay, what are you trying? So this is where you are right now. This is what you're trying to achieve. Okay, to do that, I suggest we do this, and approximately this is what it would cost. I mean, to your question there, whether it's the first, second, third person, I don't think there's too much difference necessarily. What we've got to focus on, though, is this is what we'll do to solve your problem. So this is how we would deal with it. And this is approximately what it would be. Because guess what? At some point, they're going to know what the price is anyway. So we don't want to be too afraid of it. What we don't want to do is lead with, this is the price, and then this is what you'll get. So when people are really keen on knowing the price, first of all, and they're really price sensitive, it's a sign that maybe they're not going to buy it, or if they do, there might be a bit of a nightmare because the price is more important to them than what they're actually going to get. So there's a thing coming later we'll talk about called the value loop, where we talk about their problem first of all, we link our offering to it, then we talk about the price. But ideally, we want to know, rather than kind of guess, know they're the decision maker by saying, is there anybody else involved in making this decision? Which is a nicer way of saying it rather than, are you the decision maker? Which some people might take offense at. And if somebody lies to you and says they are and they aren't, you can't really do anything about that. But the hope is if you say, is there anybody else involved? They will say, yeah, it's Bob. Great. Can we have a chat with Bob? And the reason is then you don't have to sell me internally, James, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully that answers your question. But when we get to the value loop, that'll be really useful for you. Okay, excuse me, productization. So for a large or complicated offering, sometimes we can productize different elements. This is a bit like collating it into ranges and things. So this is our product that does this. This is our product that does this. We're saying product, but really it's a selection of services or things. It's not actually a physical, actual product. One of the examples I use here is, if you're a PT, personal trainer, or anybody who charges by the hour, you could go from, if I'm £20 an hour, would you like to work with me for 10 hours? It's £200 plus VAT. Like, oh, I don't know. It's not very compelling, is it? And we're really focused on the 200 divided by the 10. That's £20. Well, I don't even make £20 an hour kind of thing. And we have those kind of commoditized conversations. What about this? So I'm a personal trainer, loads of different things I can do. One of the things I've got is the 6-week 6-pack package. There's lots of pepper in there. 6-week 6-pack package. It's £200 plus VAT. How does that sound to you? So it's 10 hours across 6 weeks. Imagine if you could actually do that. I'd sell out, wouldn't I? It's 10 hours across 6 weeks, but it's focused on what they want. So if I'm a PT and I do a lot of personal trainer and I do lots of different things, I could have, the drop a dress size package, the 6-pack package, the bicep packet, whatever. But I can segment and that's far more compelling than just, obviously you want to buy my time. How much of my time would you like? Like, well, I don't know, as little as possible. I'm trying to achieve a goal. So if we say, what are you trying to achieve? I actually want a 6-pack because I've always struggled, never got one. Okay. 6-pack package it is. This is what it is, blah, blah, blah. we'll then explain it's 10 hours. But in this scenario, it's more compelling and it's much easier for us to connect with their problem. And also, you're not instantly doing that £200 divided by 10 thing, which we all do because we're trying to work out what we get for the money. And if you've ever been quoted something, or, you know, if you're a solicitor or something like that, and they earn more an hour than you do, it's quite galling, isn't it? Oh, my goodness me, they earn more than I do. So with the 6-week, 6-pack thing, where we're kind of hiding the 10 hours, but not in a misleading way, but it's secondary, it's less obvious, because we're focusing on what you want. The cost of your 6-pack is 200 quid and that's it. Okay, so that's a large, complicated offering, got lots of different things that are on offer. We can segment, we can talk about the scope. We must make sure we talk about the minimums and the maximums so we don't lose people in that IFA example in particular. Then we come to justifying the price. So if you've got a high value or an intangible offering, now this is a question to consider, is do you think you're expensive? And in your heart of hearts, you'll either say yes or no to this. And I don't know what you're going to say to this. It's entirely up to you, but you know, it's a bit like, you know, if you've given it your all or you haven't. It's something internal, right? But if you think your own offering is expensive, for whatever reason, it will always be a problem for you to sell it because you will exude that. You will communicate that through your energy. And this is where we have people say, oh, well, we're not the cheapest, but, and there's any kind of hesitation with the price. This is what we're looking for: confidence, certainty, expertise. So imagine, so you're talking to me, I'm certain, I'm confident, I've got a million black and white slides, it's all good. We talk about money and I crumble. And so it starts at, and you can just feel that I'm really uncomfortable talking about money. It's disconcerting, it'll put you off. This is the reality. What you think about what you charge doesn't actually matter. I managed to actually nail this last week. I was at a client in Edinburgh for a 2-day training. They had this in a big way. They thought they're expensive, big problem for them internally. It's got the internal kind of stuff. So I coined a term for them, which is price is fact, not emotion. So this is a mouse. This is a microphone. This is a monitor. This is a camera I'm talking into. This is the price. So we talk about the prices. So it's a factual thing. This is a cup of coffee. This is the price. There we go. There's no emotion. I don't tell you how I feel about the cup of coffee, do I? Well, I'd like another one. That'd be great. Thanks very much. 2 sugars. I just tell you, it's a cup of coffee. There we go. No emotional attachment. It's very much easier said than done. I get that. But if you can experiment with this, if you do think you're expensive and you know internally if you do or you don't, what's the price? It's £6,000 plus VAT. How does that sound to you? Because the only opinion we care about is theirs, not yours. And I've had people who have found me extremely cheap and extremely expensive. So it's all over the place. It's what other people decide because it's their opinion that matters most. So price is fact, not emotion. This is the price. How does that sound to you? You've just got to try and keep eye contact with them, not waver in any way. There we go. Because whether you think it's expensive or cheap doesn't matter. And if you find yourself putting in extra words, oh, we're not the cheapest, or whatever, you kind of go in the houses a little bit. That's what we need to cut out. How much is that? It'll be around 5,000 to 10,000 plus VAT. How does that sound to you? Is that kind of what you're expecting? And then let them talk. And if you feel really nervous about talking about the price, at that point, you can take a sip of water, a sip of your drink. So it's not out of this world for somebody to do that, but it allows you to then, for a little bit of silence, for them to respond. Because if you think you're expensive, you might say it's £6,000. But we could discount, blah, blah, whatever. You might feel the void. So if you just take a slow sip of your drink and hopefully they will come back in the meantime, it should diffuse that. We have a hand raised. Go for it.
Hi. Yeah, no, I just wanted to add that I kind of I don't want to be the cheapest. I want to be expensive.
No, of course,
I want them to feel that they're getting value. And the more we get, the more we can invest in things. So quite often agencies, they throw events on where they invite clients. So they're giving extra value. I mean, Rolls-Royce, for example, I hosted a golf day for Rolls-Royce once. I was asked by them to take 12 of their golfers out and look after them for the day. And they do things like that because you bought a Rolls-Royce. So they find out what you're interested in and put on VIP experiences. So there's a lot of merit in charging more, but offering more. I just thought I'd
absolutely.
add that.
No, I agree with that entirely. Absolutely. I mean, to be fair, I think it's very rare that people say, oh, you're really cheap. If anything, we go, oh my God, that's really expensive. And of course, we know from yesterday, the answer to that is, oh, what makes you say that? where's that reference point? Because expensive is relative. So the point here when it comes to justifying the prices, you might think you're expensive. If you do, price is fact, not emotion. This is a cup of coffee. This is the price. There we go. And I know it's easier said than done on a quiz. I get that. But next time you're in that scenario, just experiment with that and see if you can do it. Take a sip of water, just because what we don't do is just fill with lots of words. That's generally what we do. Is it's £6,000. Oh, but whatever. And we can do arbitrary discounting into all this mess. Take a sip of water, relax. Say, how does that sound to you? Is that kind of what you're expecting? Because their opinion matters on that, not yours. And again, what makes you say that, right? Oh, it's expensive. Oh, really? What makes you say that? Just gently pushing back on them, trying to get some more information. One of the things we need to think about justifying the price is this. So if I don't buy a clear sales message or buy your product or service or whatever, there is a cost to delaying what I'm doing or taking no action. So to use my rock and roll example of my roof, which to be fair, I've needed for about 16 years, but never mind. It leaks ever so slightly because I've got a Victorian house. It leaks ever so slightly. So the cost is over time, that's going to damage things, damage the rafters, damage all sorts of stuff. So delaying it has a cost. It's just not obvious. It's like the going to the gym, not going to the gym. It's a hidden choice, but it's still there. So this is one of the things to remind people, oh, not now, we'll come back in 6 months. Well, in 6 months' time, how many deals could you have lost because you didn't have a clear sales message and people don't know what you're offering? Obviously, we'd phrase that much more respectfully and less flippantly than there, but you get the point. So what's the cost of delay or inaction for your own offering? Just consider that and have that in your arsenal, particularly when somebody says, oh, it's expensive, it's a bit more than we had planned, etc. We covered this yesterday, but ROI, return on investment, is about value, not just money. So it's about what they get. And it could be things like saving time, saving money, avoiding negative consequences, pursuing something positive. There's a myriad of different returns on investment you could have that aren't money. So the Rolls-Royce Golf Day thing, for example, I could meet somebody there and do a business deal. So I could have an opportunity presented to me that I would otherwise never have been able to do so because I bought a very expensive car. And actually, that's part of the reason why some people do it. Reason people fly first class or business class sometimes is because there's networking opportunities. You meet those kind of people. So it's just being aware that not all ROI is financial. So when we're justifying the price, we can stand firm on that and deliver it confidently because we believe in it. Yes, there's no direct financial ROI, but you will save time. There's networking opportunities. There's this, there's that. And again, a bit of homework for you guys, or we'll do it on our call. What are those? What is the ROI, the return on investment for your offering? What are those kind of knock-on things that we can talk about? We can have up our sleeve. There we go. Last one, access to resource opportunity. There's the Rolls-Royce Golf Day straight away. It can help you do other things. Unfair advantage. Yes, go for it.
Sorry, I actually don't have to raise my hand on Zoom anymore. They've changed.
That's all right. That's all right. You'd have to keep apologizing. It's fine. We're all too British. Sorry
It
for
really
being
is,
alive.
isn't it? It's such a trait.
Sorry for being alive. Yeah, go on.
Just circling back to the pricing part. I know we spoke about menu pricing just a moment ago, but we're talking about justifying a bit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn how to qualify my prospects before we even get on the phone. Okay. So going back to the intake form or even the website in itself, is it worth starting from clearly advertised? So we're not, I guess, given a clear list of what prices there are. So we're not quite doing menu pricing, but it's clear to them what the starting rate is, what is that MLE?
Yes, you can do that. This is a personal choice thing. You can do that. That will deter some people and it will attract others. It's a personal choice for you, but yeah, absolutely, you can do that. It will certainly mean that the people who come on the call should know, but they might not because they might not even read it. You'd be astonished things people don't read because we don't read things either, if we're really honest with ourselves. So you might have people who come on the call, go, oh, what? I didn't see that. Sorry about that. And they can't actually afford you. But yeah, if you want to do it, as long as you're comfortable doing it, absolutely. It's a great way we're just trying to polarize and segment people. So we're not wasting our time talking to people who are just not a good fit for us. Ultimately, we want to do it in the nicest, most respectful way possible. So yeah, absolutely. As long as you're comfortable. Excuse me. I would say.
Also, thank you for keep reiterating that we don't read things because it's true. So when you just ROI a moment ago,
I'm telling you off.
I love it. On my website, on the proposal, it literally has how much does burnout cost your organization, and I've got the numbers there, but I never articulate it in a meeting.
There we go. And it's important, right? But the way I'm talking about we don't read things is just to remind you that your behavior as a buyer is very similar to the behavior of your buyers. So if you can't be bothered to read an email or can't be bothered to do this or do that or come to certain conclusions, the same is probably true of your buyers, which is fine. But if we want to sell something to somebody, we've got to make it as easy as possible and give them everything they need ultimately. And yeah, I just like telling people off all day, every day. It's great. I'll presume you're sorry. It's fine. We'll move on. So justifying the price. Another thing we can talk about here is an unfair advantage. So most people, sometimes I use me as an example. Trust me, this is not me trying to sell you a clear sales message. Don't worry about that. But I have to use examples. And sometimes my coffee cups and things on my desk don't give me good inspiration. Unfair advantage, it could be that most businesses have got branding guidelines, but they don't have messaging guidelines. So they don't actually have a streamlined way of talking about their offering and what they're doing. So they're missing opportunities. If everybody at Bob's Widgets and Co has got this in place and we're all saying the same things and blah, 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 and we're talking about the cost of burnout and all the things that matter, we can potentially pinch business from the competition. We've got an advantage over them because they're not doing that. So sometimes we can align what we're doing to an unfair advantage over the competition. And that's really appealing for people. So if you remember from yesterday, people like to complain. When we do, we also like to apologize. People like to complain, but we're also greedy, right? And self-focused. So if I tell you I can give you something that means you can beat the other people on this call and make more money than them, whatever, if they're in the same industry, oh, I'm listening. So it's attractive. So we go from justifying the price of being in that kind of inferior position of, oh, this is what you get for the money, to actually, this is awesome. I don't think you realize, James, this is how cool it could be, and blah, blah, blah. So we can just reframe it. Obviously, we're not lying to people and misleading them. This has to be factual, true stuff. But the reality is you may never have thought about presenting it in that way. And it's very attractive as a buyer. Justifying the price. You remember this slide from yesterday. We can also use equivalence. So where else have your clients spent decent money on something and they wouldn't dream of compromising? And can we convey that across here? So a kind of flippant example could be, what kind of car do you drive? Well, I drive a Mercedes, I drive a BMW, whatever. Oh, that's interesting. Why do you drive that? Well, the build quality, the support, the brand, etc., etc. Okay, so you wouldn't buy the cheapest of the cheap car. No, absolutely not. Okay. And if we can then compare that across to what we're doing, well, a clear sales message is very much like that because of the build quality and the support and blah, blah, blah. This will only work if there's an actual realistic example. Sometimes people use the price of a cup of coffee a day kind of equivalent example. But to be frank, unless you're talking about coffee, it's really irrelevant, right? So it's got to be a good equivalence. If it's not there, you can't use it. But there will be some things your buyers would never compromise on spending money on. And if they're relevant to this, we can use them. What your offering is made of. So if it's a physical thing, obviously there are materials that go into that and processes, etc. But if it's a service, there's qualifications, there's experience, there is proprietary studies, there's software, there's all sorts of stuff that goes into what you're doing. So this one, when it comes to justifying the price, with the caveat that your buyers have to care about it. Okay. So, well, I went to university for 10 years to learn how to do this. I couldn't care less, unfortunately. That doesn't make any difference to me. If it's got to be something that's meaningful for the person. So we're ISO compliant. What that means is blah. If you see what that means is comes back in here, right? Go from feature to benefit. So we're made of this, or we do this with this experience, blah, blah, blah. But what goes into making your offering can be a great way to justify the price. What you can't do here is say, well, of course, we've got 5 people and an office and we like to eat 3 times a day or whatever. That's not a good enough justification because I don't care about that as your buyer. But if you've invested in new technology, in an app, in a study, in something that forms part of what you're doing, okay, now I'm listening. This is really interesting. Does that make sense? Sometimes I lose people on that one, but does that make sense, all of you guys? Cool. I can see Sunny nodding. This is good. Sunny, you're pretty much the kind of the bellwether for me here. So if you're not nodding, we've got a problem because you're my little Brady Bunch screen. How long does your thing last? So justifying the price, the longer something lasts, the easier it is for us to justify in our mind the price. So if you buy, a sofa, but for whatever reason it's going to last 50 years or whatever, you would think that's much better value than the same price of sofa that's only going to last 5 or 10 years. So this is kind of coming back to the obvious sales message thing of, well, how long could it last, what you're doing, the impact of it, or the materials, or whatever you're supplying to these people? What's the impact? For me, with a clear sales message, it's anything from 3 to 5 years, really conservatively. So I generally have a conversation with people where I say, look, when we create your messaging, it's going to impact your conversations and your conversions. And there's a little calculation we can make about that. But it won't just do it for this year. It will do it for the next 3 to 5 years, potentially. So if you take that number and times it by 3 or 5, that's really what this could be worth to you. Obviously, you know, no guarantees. This is a reasonable assumption. We're just using working logic here. But by extending the time frame and getting people to think in a longer term, it's much easier for them to justify the price. Did somebody want to ask a question there, or did they just brush past their microphone? I'm guessing they brushed past their microphone. I'll carry on. Payback time. So this is talking about ROI as in money, but this is another way to express it. So you might not be able to say, give me £1, I'll give you £5 back, but you may be able to say, well, once you've invested in what we're doing, from what we found typically within 6 to 18 months, the savings that you would make here, or the additional business that you would do there, blah, 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 would mean that actually you're net positive. So what you've spent on what we're doing has paid itself back and you're in profit, so to speak. So this relies on having some actual empirical evidence and I was going to say qualifications, calculations of what's happening, but it's another way of expressing that. So yes, you spend money on something. So you invest in a new piece of machinery. So you spend £500,000 today, and it's a big amount of money out of the business. But in 18 months, it's bringing in £15 million a year in turnover. Great. We can understand that. We can see it. Now, I know not everybody's got this very simple pounds and pence analogy. I get that. I have to give you all the different options here for justifying the price. And of course, if you can then have that as a nice, neat graphic like this one, even better. While we're on this one, because I actually said the word a second ago and I shuddered as I said it, I've got a real personal issue with the word investment. I don't know if it's just me or not, but you know, when you're buying something and somebody says, the investment is blah, 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 for some reason, and it could just be me being strange, it grates on me because it tells me it's probably going to be expensive, so much so they have to call it an investment rather than a price. So it could just be me. I see you shaking your head there, Sunny. If you're happy doing that and that resonates with you, that's cool. For me, I'm like, oh no, investment, this is going to be expensive. It always catches me. I don't know why.
I use that as a word perhaps after, like, I've been fortunate when you talk to clients about the value of the services I provide. Mm-hmm. And then the conversation furthers on. It's always a case of it's what you're investing in you and your brand and your business, and it's how you value that growth. That's the context I use that investment, cool. As opposed to I'm looking for 5k because that's an investment in you. It's you're right. That to me would be like I roll at that, but it's a bit like it's what you're investing in your growth and building your business, and that's the way you should look at it.
That is okay. I'm comfy with that. It's when we don't say price, we literally switch out the word price for investment. The investment is £5,000, whatever. No. That's the bit that grates me because I'm like, oh God, why do you have to change the word? You obviously think it's expensive and you're trying to justify it to me. So yeah, we can talk about things as an investment. But for me personally, as soon as somebody says the investment is, oh no. Either it's expensive or you've been to one of these terrible sales seminars where you've been told to send everybody to the back of the room and all this kind of nonsense. But yeah, maybe that's just me.
Pyramid schemes and MLM vibes if I hear someone tell me the investment, exactly, or the price of investment. That's what it reminds me of.
Exactly. And you know what? You're not going to tell that person, are you? They're going to tell you what the investment is, and you're going to run a country mile and never get back to them, and they'll never know. And that's a nuance of this stuff. Like the things that we say and do can attract or deter people accordingly. And we won't really get told because we are too damn polite, and we're not going to phone up and say, actually, when you said investment, I threw up a little bit in my mouth and that was it. I didn't want to do it. We don't say that, right? We just disappear. So yeah, not just me being weird then. This is good. The without effect. So what doesn't your offering need? So if I use your product or your service, are you cutting out something that would cost me time or money? So you're essentially giving me a bit of a shortcut. So the example here, I can't believe this is a real thing, right? How to lose weight without exercise. You must have to do something, surely to God. But that's an attractive title, right? If you're looking to lose weight, how to lose it without exercise. I'm listening. This is awesome. So it might not be applicable for your offering, but what do you cut out? So we do this, but you don't have to worry about this piece of software or hiring these people or doing this stuff or investing in this stuff. We've cut this out because it's part of our service. So if we're justifying the price, we charge this, but don't forget, if you go with us, you don't need that ultimately. How to lose weight without exercise. I can't believe that's real, but it is on Amazon. So everything on Amazon is real, right? Okay. Number 3, intangible. So you've got a service-based offering, something that's intangible. What do I get for the money is kind of the implication here. It's like, okay, James, I'm going to pay you to create me a clear sales message, and a clear sales message sounds tangible, and I've got my little grid there and all my stuff, but ultimately it's going to be a PDF chock full of words that are going to make you feel more confident and you can sell more stuff, which for some people is a huge stretch of the imagination, and they literally think it's the emperor's new clothes and they're not interested, which I understand. And that's why I've gone so hard on my own kind of social proof and having millions and millions of people, well, hundreds of people say nice things about me on LinkedIn. So I've got a ton of proof I can prove it works. But an intangible offering, what do I get for the money? We have to be careful here. So when we itemize things, it can lead to commoditizing things. This is probably one of the most tongue twistery things I'm going to say to you today. Itemizing leads to commoditizing. But as soon as we itemize things that we give to people, they can commoditize it. So if I say, you know, it's a clear sales message, so that'll be 3 sessions at 3 hours a session, and this phone call and that and blah, blah, blah. That's not actually helping me to justify the price or convey the intangible. That's doing quite the opposite, because they're going to, it's like that 6-pack thing, which I think might be the next thing here. Yeah, productization. So it comes back to this, right? So it's the 10 hours for 200 quid versus the 6-pack package. So when you've got an intangible thing, you're better off productizing it and not talking about the itemization of what they get, and talking about the end result. And I'm totally skipping through my slides in the wrong order here, but it's all good. So don't commoditize. What we want to do is focus on the deliverable. So it's a clear sales message. It's not 100 hours of my time or whatever at £100 an hour or whatever. And when I started my business, I have a fixed price, fixed deliverable offering. And I wanted that because with my hat on as a buyer, I really hate it when people say, well, I'm £100 an hour and Lord only knows how long this is going to take. And it's just, you feel like you're just letting yourself in for, oh my God, like how long? There's no limit here. And of course, they're then incentivized to take as long as possible to charge you as much as possible, which I didn't like. So, well, I wouldn't buy that. So I wanted a fixed price thing. And my deliverable, the end result is a clear sales message. So it's all tightly focused on that. I'm not just selling my time. So if you have an intangible offering, we need to relate everything back to the desired end result. Best way to do that is to productize like this. So this is the bicep package, the 6-pack package, the drop a dress size package, whatever. In your own business, and if you're a personal trainer, your quid's in here because I've sorted you out with everything, but in your own business, what are the end results people are looking for? And how can we talk about that? So this is our offering for brand awareness. This is our offering for engagement on social, for following, for increasing sales, whatever. We get away from being intangible by focusing and productizing onto the fixed deliverables that the people actually want and talking their language. We're not selling time or specifics. We're selling an end result, something tangible that they actually desire and they can understand. One of the ways we can articulate this doesn't always have to be photographic, but it's better if it's visual, is the before and the after. So, you know, if it's a web design, for example, this is what it looked like before, this is what it looked like after. If you don't have a visual and it's numbers, then, you know, if we can display those statistics, those numbers in an infographic style, a visual thing is really important, because going back to that notion of, you know, we don't actually read certain things. When you have facts and figures and, you know, before and after, et cetera, if we just put it in text, people may never read it or they may skim read it. So if we have it in a visual form as well, we've made it as easy as possible for them to take that information on board, because people may never see your MLE, your minimum level of engagement on your website, even though it's there. And even though you're like, it's there, why didn't you read it? There will still be people that don't read it. So this is about making it as easy as possible for people to understand. We can come back to equivalence. So where else have they spent money on an intangible thing and they had no problem doing that? So other professional services or insurances or whatever. is there an equivalent example of they've invested in an intangible service, but it's been brilliant for them and they would never have questioned it? If there's an example, we can use that to bring tangibility to your offering, because we're just comparing it to that. And equivalence goes back to, we take something you understand, something you don't quite understand, and we splice them together. So if I've got a new app and it's the Uber of hairdressing, you know exactly what that's going to be. You could write me a paragraph on what you'd expect that to, how that would operate, etc., and you'd be absolutely right. This comes down to, this is not on the slides, but this is an important point to note. So how we actually communicate, going back to the people not reading MLE, minimum level of engagement on the website, etc., we communicate in a funny way. So we actually operate in schemas. So we take pieces of information and then we connect the dots ourselves in our mind. And here's a real world example. So if I said to you, red, sporty, and fast, red, sporty, and fast, even if you're not into cars, you're thinking of a car. And if you are into cars, you're thinking of a Ferrari. But I didn't say that. I said red, sporty, and fast, and you connected the dots. That's a schema. So when we communicate with people, we've got to be very careful that they are pretty much connecting the dots, and they may never read all the beautiful words that we've put together for them. So we have to make sure the things, particularly when they're written down, are skimmable, and there's visual elements to it, and there's highlighted and bold bits, things to catch the eye, because generally we scan things in an F shape. We never really read a newspaper or a website or an email start to finish like this, right? We kind of scan across to what's interesting, look, and then jump around a bit. And you know that next time you get an email, just pay attention to how you're actually reading it without getting complex about it. Pay attention to how you actually read things and take on board information. So when we communicate with people, particularly in a written format on a website, for example, we've got to make it as easy as possible for them to just take a bloody guess and get it right. And it's one of the reasons why I'm called Clear Sales Message, because and it was completely accidental. I realized retrospectively why it's so effective. At the time, I was like, I just like the name, I'll pick that name. So it was nothing could drive. Retrospectively, I understand how important the name is, but from Clear Sales Message, I guarantee there are people in your world you could talk to today who I've never met, don't know who I am. You can say, this is his company, what do you think he does? They should either be absolutely right or at least in the ballpark, from 3 words. And that is a supreme commercial advantage, because if I'm called James Newell Consulting, what do you think he does? Who knows? Anyway, I'm going to get back off my soapbox, but we communicate in schemas. So keeping all this stuff as concise and short as possible, and essentially kind of guessable, if that's a word. So we want people to connect the dots. That's when we really take a big leap forward in actually getting people to read our MLE, minimum level of engagement, or anything else on our website. When it comes to intangible, which is what we're still on, losing my thread now with all these soapbox moments, we can use transformation statements. So it's a bit like the before and after thing, but it's the verbalization of that. So we'll take you from scared. This is for an old book that I used to have, an ebook, from scared to selling in an afternoon, because it takes 2 hours to read it. So we go from where you are right now to where you want to be in this time frame. So if you have an intangible offering, if you're like, oh, what do we get for the money? This is, or, what is it? This is a good way to articulate what to expect. We'll take you from hardly any brand awareness to this level of brand awareness, however that marker is kind of ratified with them, over the next 6 months, 5 years, 20 minutes, whatever. Where you are, where you want to be in this time frame. It's called a transformation statement. Okay. That's intangible stuff. So when you're selling a service, so you're not selling actual physical widgets, and people find it hard to understand what they get. They also you might then also find it hard to justify the price, going back a step, because if I'm just selling my time and my words and my energy and some PDFs to you, you might think, well, why are you charging me 25 million pounds for this then, James? So it's up to me to be able to confidently and comfortably explain why I charge the way I do and what you're going to get. Move to number 4 of 5, which is nice to have. So this is when you have a conversation, and I'm sure you've all done this, where you've had conversation with somebody and they go, oh my God, this is brilliant. Oh, we're going to take over the world, Sonny. This is awesome. And then you never hear from them again, and they don't buy from you. So they don't actually spend their money with you. So they tell you it's nice and wonderful, etc., but something was missing because they didn't care about it. Not enough to spend money with you. Maybe they're being polite with you, but generally this happens because there's just something there that's It's not compelling enough. Sounds great, not for me, thanks, because something is missing. Yesterday, we talked about how we can get people to care about our offering. 3 things. So, there's a spelling mistake. That's disappointing. Connect emotionally is the first one. I don't think anybody noticed either. It's okay. Connect emotionally to the person. So, for my clients, I give them confidence when they're selling. So that's why you should care about it. Relate it to their circumstances. So this is where I say, if you've got brand guidelines, we'll give you messaging guidelines. Oh, now I understand it. And prove I works or prove it works. Again, having that social proof where you should care, because we've helped 300 businesses like you to increase their sales, raise brand awareness, save money, do this, blah, 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 whatever. But we've got proof. So the nice to have objection is, sounds great. Oh, just not for me. I don't see the value in it. I'm not going to spend money on this. I don't care about it. It's kind of what they're saying to you, but they'd never be so rude, right? Because we like to apologize for everything. So this is how we get around that. We can make you feel a certain way and connect with their emotional kind of destination they're looking for. Do you want to feel proud, safe, secure, confident, whatever? What does that look like for your buyer? Relate it to their circumstances, something they understand. So you already invest in this. So it makes sense that you spend money on this, or you wouldn't have the cheapest this. So you should spend money here if there's a relevant example. And the last one, prove it works. So have that proof to hand. I talk about social proof a lot, don't I? That's because it's important. Okay, a warning sign is a lack of action. So you're talking to people and they go, oh my God, Sunny, I'm going to keep picking on you, Sunny, hopefully, man. Oh my God, Sunny, this is brilliant. This is awesome. Oh, it's beautiful. Great. Send me some details. This is cool. And then nothing happens. This is the nice to have objection at play. So, and they might even actually respond to you, right? So, any news on this? Blah, blah. Oh, leave it with me. Leave it with me. Oh, and nothing happens. We have to remember a couple of things. So if they're not taking any action, if they're not being specific, goes back to this from yesterday, and hopefully I didn't misspell this one. No, I didn't. Good. Buyers want details, non-buyers want space. If somebody is distancing themselves from you, however lovely and pleasant they may be with you on the phone, they're probably not interested. There's no definitives. They're probably not interested. If we're looking at averages and probability, that's fine. We'll just try and find more people to talk to. It's not really worth our while trying to end, we can follow that person up to a point, but endlessly following people up when they're not really coming back to us or giving anything never really turns into much. Despite what the evidence might tell you about a certain number of follow-ups, you have to get a feel for what's right with your business and your particular buyer that you're talking to. So buyers want details, non-buyers want space. Often people say, oh my God, this is awesome. Yep, send me some details, because they're trying to be nice to you and they don't want to be rude by saying, it's not going to work. It's so expensive or whatever, because we want to be rude, right? So we tend to give people false hope, unfortunately. And we've all done it to people. We don't mean to be mean. Actually, we're trying to be nice, right? Because we don't want to be blunt with them. But in giving them false hope, it's a bit like that scene in Dumb and Dumber. I don't know if you remember this film from back in the day when the lady's talking to Jim Carrey's character and he's saying, so you're saying there's a chance? She's like 1 in a million chance she's going to get with him as a girlfriend. So you're saying there's a chance? And he's hanging on to 1 in a million, not realizing that actually it's pretty unlikely to happen. This is what we're doing by giving people false hope. And this is where the nice to have objection comes from. Okay, while we're talking about nice to have and trying to get people actually talking money and interested in commercializing things, this is the bit I alluded to earlier on, how to commercialize a conversation. I call it the value loop because I like to give things weird names. This is what it looks like. So I'm having a conversation right now with Shazida, for example, and I think she's interested, but she's not asked me any of the buying questions just yet, or maybe she has, but I want to try and talk commercials and get into this conversation. So I'll start with, Shazida, can I stop you for a second and just repeat back what you've said to me so I can make sure I've understood it? Is that okay? Nobody is saying no to that. It's a bit like when you say, can I go to the toilet? Nobody said no in the history of time, right? What do you do if that happens? It's never happened, right? So can I repeat back what you've told me to make sure I've understood it? Of course, she's going to say yes. Of course, James, that's fine. The purpose of this is a couple of things. First of all, I want to make sure I've actually got it right. I might have misunderstood something, actually. It shows that I care about her and I've been paying attention and taking notes, which is important. But also, I can now paint out a horrible, disgusting reality and read it back to her just to make her realize how terrible her life really is right now. Sorry, Shazida. So this is where I understand you are right now. this is a problem for you and you hate this and you're struggling with this and blah, 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 blah. I'm making sure I've got it right. I'm telling her that I paid attention and I care about her, but I'm also confronting her with her reality. It's a bit like if you went to like a personal training session, just to confirm. So you're like 99% body fat. Yeah. Okay. You're like, oh my God. You know, when you hear some of these things, you're confronted with them like, oh my God, maybe I should actually deal with this. This is where you are right now. And Shazida, from what I understand, this is where you want to be. So you want to be more confident with this and solve this and save time on that or whatever. So this is the destination. This is where she wants to be. So we've gone from this is your terrible reality to this is the cool, sexy future that you want. Have I understood that correctly? And if I haven't, of course, we can adjust that accordingly. But it's important that I get this right. This is where you are. This is where you want to be. To get you to where you want to be, I think what we should do for you is create a clear sales message. And what we would do there is this, 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 and this. And every time I'm saying that, we do this because of this. And we would do that because, and you know how you don't like this? Well, that would solve that, blah, blah, blah. So I'm connecting every single facet of what I'm going to do for her together. I'm not going to spend like 3 weeks going through every single thing. So we're going to have a fairly brief, high-level conversation. But, you know, I think we should look at renaming the business. We should look at objections in particular, because I know you said that was difficult, right? Blah, 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 whatever. But I connect these things across. Have you understood that correctly? Okay. Yep. So getting her buy-in at all points. Okay. Typically, to do a project of that nature, from experience, it's around 13 to 137 million pounds approximately. How does that sound to you? So again, price is fact, not emotion. So delivering it just like another fact. It's sunny outside. This is the price. No emotion at all. This is what it will cost. Either you can tell me a pounds and pence exact figure, depending on your business, or you can give me a ballpark. Now, this is potentially contentious because some people do not like talking about money, or they can't talk about money. I get that. My advice here is experiment, because if you can't verbalize the price, you run a high risk of them ghosting you when you propose them, and the price is way different from what they're expecting potentially. But it also gives us an opportunity to discuss things. So it's in the region of, you know, £5 to £25 plus VAT. How does that sound to you? So, oh, that's a bit more than we thought. Actually, that's not too bad, you know, blah, 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 whatever. Or could we split the pay? You'll get some kind of feedback if I'm talking to her. If I email her, I get no feedback. I have no idea. So verbalize the price if you can. And if you can't give a specific, if you can give a ballpark, even a rough ballpark, like tens of thousands of pounds different, just somewhere to hang your hat. Because you know as well as I do, when you're talking to somebody going to buy from them, I don't care if you tell me you don't have a budget. Of course, you got a damn budget. You've got a figure in your head. We're like, if it's any more than that, I can't do this, or hopefully it'll be as cheap as this. People have got an approximate budget. They just don't like to share it, because if I tell you my budget is £1,000 and you go, oh, that's great, James, because our quote is £1,000. Look at that. That's incredible. That's what we're worried about. You're going to take as much money as possible. So this is where you are right now. This is where you want to be. This is how we'll get there. This is approximately what it would cost, but I'd need to send a proper proposal across to you. Oh, hello. How does that sound to you? Nice open question. And then from there, we'll get some feedback. And then from there, it's a loop. So, you know, we can go, oh, I thought you said blah, but blah. So we can go back in if we need to. In my 5 years of doing this and my 12 years of working in sales, this has been the only system that I've found that works repeatedly and feels comfortable. So the alternative to this is, so you're probably wondering what we charge. Okay, let's talk about packages and prices or whatever. Anything else just feels like you're putting the handbrake on the conversation and we're just turning wildly and the energy changes dramatically. With this, it's a lot more subtle, a lot more subtle. And we're leading with what they want and what they care about. Then we talk about the price. So this is that syntax thing where we talk about the most important thing to them first of all, and then the boring stuff thereafter. Hand raise in the top corner there.
Hey,
it's
James.
half term, isn't it? I feel your pain.
Oh yeah, they're non-stop.
I lock my kids up. It's fine. I let them out.
Yeah. The word search didn't last very long.
That's because there's no chocolate in it. But anyway.
So question is, how do you feel about asking what their budget is? Because I'm thinking of putting in the email, you know, how many times do you want it? How many newsletters? And what's your budget? Do you have a budget in mind?
You can ask. I would try not to in an email,
Okay.
because in an email it's easy to just ignore the question outright. So you can definitely ask it. Just be prepared when people say, "Oh, I don't know." Oh, you tell me, what does it cost? So you've got to then have a retort for that. So, okay, from experience, it's about this. How does that sound to you? Because otherwise we have it's almost like when you're going out for dinner. Where do you want to go? Oh, I don't know. Where do you want to go? And nobody puts a line in the sand. So have you got a budget in mind for this? Yes, it's this. Great. We can work with that and talk about it. No, we don't. Okay. Just to kind of set your expectation, it'll be in the order of this, but we really don't want to be talking budget and money until we've gone through those first couple of steps, because when you take price out in isolation, everything's expensive in isolation. This is how we justify the price, and we don't want to spend ages talking about it in the build up, because there's that annoying thing where you just get to the price. As I just want to know. So we don't want to spend too long doing it, but we do have to do it in that way. So yeah, by all means ask the question, but try not to talk about money on email. Try to verbalize it, because you can get a read on them as to if it's truthful or what they really feel about it.
And is it better to kind of generally, if you send a proposal, arrange a Zoom call or a face-to-face and talk them through it if you can, rather than doing it via just an email?
No, so this is more personal preference. For me, I wouldn't, because that would feel kind of I'd feel obliged to read through your proposal and you're right there looking at me. So I'd have to go, okay, that's great. I'm going to go ahead. So for me, I would talk through everything beforehand. I'll send you a proposal that confirms everything we've spoken about. And then from there, either, it's in your court or we'll speak with you next week or whatever. But can you imagine if I sent you a proposal and then I said, great, we'll have a chat next week, and I'm just on this Zoom call, you reading going, okay, happy with that? Are you want to go ahead? It's a bit I would feel a bit of pressure personally to say yes if you're watching me read the proposal. Okay. Thanks. But that's personal preference. You've always got to do what feels right to you. Sunny.
Hey, I was just going to share that my experience of doing A to B, like I love seeing this, and actually it's interesting the steps that come after this. When I do that initial conversation that someone's interested in my services, and I do that one pager, which, Mernal, to your point, I always do a connect, just want to talk them through so they understand it. And I wonder whether that's because my background was working with a lot of corporates who are used to buying branding services, so they know all the steps that are part of that delivery, whereas some of the founders I'm working with, and when they jump to that, oh, I just want a logo, they don't understand all the steps that go through it. So I do, right, this is where you are, this is what I'm hearing, this is your challenges, you're not growing, or you're not identifying, or you've got, you're not standing out, therefore there's, from A to B, it's these 3 or 4 steps. What does that look like, and what do you get out of that? And therefore you get to the point where they're right, I now understand that you're right. I don't know what I stand for, or I don't understand like why I'm writing these messages, because you're right, it doesn't go back to my brand value. So doing that A to B not only just shows them in terms of how you're going to get from there to there, it's the value in terms of what all of those steps that's going to involve your time and the services you're going to put in there. And then it's a nice, easy feat to get into that. This is what the cost will look like to actually in terms to take that piece of work. And I kind of leave it at that point. I don't do that. How does that sound? And maybe I do inadvertently kind of thing. I'm like, right, if that's what I've heard, you want to get from A to B, that's the cost. Why don't you have a little think about it? May have overwhelmed you today with a lot of what we're going to do. And why don't we reconnect? And to your point, I always say, just be polite. If it's out of your budget, it's not something you want to pursue, let me know, because I just don't want to chase them. And you're right, they're not worth chasing, because they're not going to spend that time with you, and you're wasting valuable time where you could be pursuing other opportunities. And then it's the fleshed out proposal where people are right, give me the detail, give me the exact thing that I'm going to get.
Yeah, and buyers want details, non-buyers want space, right? Exactly. So it's just about that. So it's like those 33 million pound people with my roof. If they want to have a chat with me to justify it, I'm not interested. Yeah, it's just not. Just spend your time elsewhere, and that's it. They haven't even come back to me. Ironically, they could have at least said thanks very much, and nothing at all. So that's wonderful. Yeah, manners are important, by the way. So even if you don't sell to somebody, thank you for your time. I appreciate whatever. I don't know if you noticed, but the world is a small place. It's literally like 40 people in the whole of planet Earth. Everybody knows everybody else. Your reputation is very important. So always be nice to everybody, even if they're not nice to you. Right. I've got 6 minutes to get through a couple more slides. It's not as bad as it was yesterday, but I'm going to talk a little bit quicker. Okay. So law of inaction. So this is about, so what happens if they don't do anything? So if I don't address my logo, my branding, etc., don't address my clear sales message, we kind of covered this already a little bit, but there is a cost there. And it's not always just a monetary cost. So you're going to miss opportunities. You're going to waste time and do this, do that. What does that look like for your offering? And have that there so you're able to articulate it. Because it's much easier to say, well, if you just buy a logo, there's 3 main reasons why you won't do that, blah, blah, blah. That's more compelling than, well, if you just buy a logo, it's probably not going to help. And it's more of a wishy-washy answer. So you might be saying the same things, but for the want of just give me almost a listicle, right? A list with numbers, a concise thing. There's 3 main reasons. Actually, number 2 is the one for you, James. Oh, I'm listening. Sounds like Sunny knows what she's doing. That's what we're looking for. And are you okay with that? So how does that sound to you? Are you okay with that? These were really nice, softly, open-ended questions where we can shut up, maybe take a drink of water if we need to, let them talk. We don't want a super huge awkward silence. Well, I'm not talking now because James told me not to talk kind of thing. But we want them to feed into the conversation. If we fill that void with words, we'll kind of betray the value of what we're doing and also betray our own confidence. Similar to inaction, there's consequences. So if you only have a logo, this will happen. If you do nothing, this will happen. If you buy our cheapest offering, this will happen. If you buy our most expensive offering, this will happen. Every decision, every action has a consequence. Just being able to signpost those for people so they understand, with the understanding it so they can make the best decision for themselves, not for me. So if you decide you just want to get a logo and you want to go to 5 and do it, that's absolutely fine with me. If you'd like to work with me, we'd love to, blah, blah, there we go. But that's it. If you go to 5, be careful. I've heard stories, whatever. We can talk about that, but it's your decision ultimately. And to be really, really clear on that, because I don't think that you can scare people off by just reminding them that it's their decision. Oh God, I can choose not to buy. Oh great. Why am I talking to you, Sunny? Buy. That's not going to happen. But people like that if you just remind them of they are in control. It's like the Curry's PC World example. Also FOMO, fear of missing out. So if you don't get a clear sales message, how many sales could you miss out on over the next few months, or people just don't understand? Or a bit like the IFA example, if you're not being clear that it's from a pound, how many people thought it was $250,000 and you could have actually worked with them? You could be missing out on things here, on business, on opportunities, on this or that. This is kind of the reverse of having an unfair advantage. This is an unfair disadvantage, right? Your competitors can actually be beating you or taking business from you because people actually understand their offering and they don't understand yours, kind of thing. But it's all just about signposting. Here's the good, here's the bad, because we tend to only focus on the good, right? If I join the gym, I'll get fit, healthy, muscly. This is awesome. If I don't, let's not talk about that. Let's move on. Well, no, we need to talk about that, and we need to signpost that out to them. Sam, I'm just going to, if you don't mind, talk to this DIY thing very quickly because we've got like 3 minutes, and then I'll take your question at the end if that's okay with you. So DIY, do it yourself. Some people think they can just do their own logo in-house, their own branding, their own messaging, their own whatever, because it's the cheapest or free, easiest option. I've got a nephew who does that or whatever. Fine, but it's their choice. Couple of things to think about. If you're going to do it yourself, quality and results will be impacted. There's a reason we're in business. We have professional tools, equipment, materials, etc. Speed. If you do something yourself, you might have to learn how to do things. It might take much longer. If I was doing your messaging, it would take me a matter of a couple of days. If you did it yourself to do to the quality I'm doing it took me 5 years to get my methodology to where I'm at now. So good luck with that. It'll take you longer and it wouldn't be as good, with all due respect. I'm not sounding arrogant about that. Errors, you're going to get something wrong. When was the last time you did something yourself and got something wrong, whether it's a DIY home project or something else for your business where you took it in-house, it messed up, and actually you spent more time and money fixing the mess you created than if you'd have just done it right in the first place? The actual cost, so paying somebody costs more because doing it in-house feels free because we already pay these people and they're already here, but there's a cost to everything. And sometimes if you pay for a professional, or every time actually, what you're paying for is the speed, the quality, the lack of errors, the insurance, the legal obligation. There's all sorts of things to contend with, and there will be specific things for your offerings. Discounts. So sometimes if I'm talking to Sunny, I say, actually, we need somebody to do our printing. So, I'll put you in touch with so-and-so, tell them my name, you'll get 20% off because they're a friend of mine, blah, blah, blah. So sometimes by using a professional, I'll access better resources and rates and deals on things than otherwise. And in the building example, if you go to B&Q, you'll pay retail. If you have a builder, they'll get it from a wholesaler, they'll pay a lot less. Connection. So professionals know other professionals. So Sunny's done my branding and everything that I need there. Oh, you don't know anybody in PR, do you? You don't know anybody in IT, do you? Maybe you do. You can connect me. If I'm doing it myself, I miss out on all of that. access to tools and materials, other things. And the final one is legal liability. It's not as relevant, but with some things you should not be doing them yourselves from a legal point of view, and you might not even realize that that's the case. We'll share this with you. We'll work out what this is for your specific offering, particularly when you book a call with me. I'll just do a very quick recap at the speed of sound, then I'll speak to Sam, then it'll be 11 o'clock, and then I can stop for breath. Okay, we looked at a large or complicated offering. These are some of the ways we can break that down, talk about the scope, the minimum, maximum. We can productize, we can itemize things like a menu, we can have ranges and cluster things together. All points we're selling the destination, not the journey, focusing on what they really want. When it comes to justifying the price, we can talk about how long things last, what they don't need, what they're made of, how it's an unfair advantage when they get their money back, or compare it to other things they spent money on. Hopefully they're similar. If you have an intangible offering, we can productize, we can talk about the before and after, we can, in a visual sense, we can talk about it in a linguistical sense, and we can also compare to other things that will matter to them. Nice to have objection. Well, if you do nothing, this will happen. You're going to miss out on these things. There's consequences to what's going on, and your job is to give people information and opportunity. Here is my offering. We'd love you to buy it, but it's your decision ultimately. Final one, DIY. We covered it there. There's quite a few things that can go wrong, but being able to articulate them is more compelling than, well, if you do it yourself, it might be difficult. More compelling if we say, actually, there's some specific things there. Stop for breath. I'm 1 minute late. Sam, you had a question. Thanks for your patience as well.
Hey, James, no problem at all. I mean, this is great, by the way. Thanks
Thank you.
for the session.
Thank you very much.
I have practical questions around sort of a gatekeepers in those businesses. Like we work with corporates and enterprises, and we have specific individuals who basically sort of say, you know what, yeah, we'll get you to the decision maker, but it takes, we have to basically sort of assess that and this and that. We try to sort of go into specifics and try to sort of address that, but there is intentionality behind these people. Just want to sort of understand how we can, sort of reduce the sales life cycle, like cycle, by getting to the decision makers without hurting those gatekeepers in one hand, if that makes sense.
Well, this is a very difficult one, and this is on a case-by-case thing. So my approach to getting to the decision maker starts with literally phoning the company and asking who deals with the thing that you're dealing with. That's the first approach. The second approach is obviously to do your research on LinkedIn or wherever and find that person, have them directly. The third approach, which is probably the thing that I least like to talk about the most when I'm talking about how to sell to people, but I found a little secret hack for getting to the decision maker back in my Mercedes days. So depending on the business, if you phone through to the switchboard and ask for accounts, and then when you get put through to accounts, receivable or payable, nobody knows the difference. It doesn't matter. And then when you're speaking to accounts, I go, oh, sorry, I was trying to reach Shazida. Could you put me through, please? Or I was trying to reach the person responsible for blah, blah. Could you put me through? People in accounts are less guarded typically. So they'll go, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll put you through to Shazida. Or actually, it's Shazida. I'll put you through or whatever. They're less guarded. So phone and ask directly. Do your homework and try and find them. But I found really effective is actually going through accounts, because they are the least guarded people. And if you say with confidence, I'd like to speak to Shazida, please, they're more likely to put you through than not. But book a call with me and we'll talk about your specific offering and specific challenges. And I'll try and give you like a real action plan for you specifically. But that's my initial take on that. I'm just a bit conscious of time.
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
Cool.
We'll catch up separately. Cheers.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for your question.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We are 3 minutes over time, so I will let no problem. I will let everyone continue with their day. Thank you, everyone, so much for coming today. I know
Thanks
that
for a
the
great
first
session.
the last session is tomorrow, so we will see you tomorrow morning.
Appreciate your time, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.